The challenge is that the net zero energy economy that the Biden administration wants requires massive amounts of minerals and materials, far more than our current energy economy powered mostly by coal, oil, natural gas. For example, an EV requires 6 times the mineral input of a conventional vehicle, and an offshore wind facility requires 9 times as much material inputs as a natural gas power plant of the same capacity. The International Energy Agency's Sustainable Development Scenario calls for a 42-fold increase in lithium demand, a 25-fold increase in graphite demand, a 21-fold increase in cobalt demand, a 19-fold increase in nickel demand, and a 7-fold increase in rare earths, all by 2040, a mere 17 years from now. The problem is that mining and material processing is far more concentrated globally than oil production has been in at least 50 years, and probably longer than that. In fact, China is the world's largest processor of copper, nickel, cobalt, lithium, and rare earths, processing between 35% and 85% of these minerals. By comparison, the 13 members of OPEC together only produce about 40% of the world's oil. Worse, as we have discussed today, China has a terrible human rights track record. The Biden administration and other countries have sanctioned China over China's abuses against the Uyghur people, for example. But these human rights abuses are not just, we don't just see them in China. For example, the Democratic Republic of Congo has more cobalt resources than the rest of the world combined. However, there's no clean supply chain of cobalt in the DRC, clean in terms of human rights. Much of the DRC's cobalt is mined from so-called artisanal miners, which include children, and are paid just a few dollars a day for very dangerous work. The problem with production in China and other places, mineral production that is not limited to modern-day slavery and human rights abuses, but also environmental degradation. The German publication Deutsche Welle argues that battery production, quote, causes radioactive earth dumps, poisoned groundwater, and indigenous population displacement, close quote, in places such as China, the DRC, and Rwanda. But there is a solution, and that is more mineral and material production here in the United States. And to that, we can look to the dramatic increase that we have seen in oil and gas production as a model. A decade ago, many people, including at the time President Obama, said that more oil and gas drilling was not a strategy to solve our energy challenge. He said it was a bumper sticker. Well, he and the other experts of the time were proved wrong, that it was not only possible, but we actually ended up producing more oil in the last decade than all other countries combined. In fact, by some measures, globally, the United States has produced about 90% of the new oil on the market over the past decade. What that means is greater energy stability and energy security for the United States and the world. Just imagine what would have happened with Russia's oil going more off the market than if the United States hadn't been there to support oil and natural gas supplies globally. And on top of that, even as we have increased our oil and gas production, air quality has continued to increase in the United States, and that is that's a fantastic success story. So just as drill baby drill worked for oil and gas production, mine baby mine can work for minerals. But one critical overlooked aspect of the shale revolution is the value of non-federal lands. The shale revolution really occurred on state and private lands because that's where people could get access to the resources. But in the case of mining, the federal government plays a key role in permitting all new mines, and the Biden administration has stifled almost all new mining development. To name a few examples, the Biden administration has stymied the development of the Twin Metals and Polymet mines in Minnesota, Resolution and Rosemont mines in Arizona, and Pebble Mine in Alaska. They have reduced access to the Ambler Mining District, also in Alaska. The Biden administration has been more disposed towards lithium mines, such as Rhyolite Ridge and Thacker Pass, but actual construction has only begun on Thacker Pass. If the Biden administration is serious about achieving its net zero goals, it will require massive amounts of new mineral production. The Biden administration should therefore work to dramatically increase domestic mining because that avoids the human rights issues abroad along with the poor environmental standards. And when we produce those minerals here, we improve our national security and honestly the national security of the world. Thank you for your opportunity to testify. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons, and I appreciate all the witnesses for your statement. We'll now begin questioning, and I recognize myself for 5 minutes. Mr. Simmons, picking up right where you left off, does the United States currently have the critical mineral extraction and refining capacity to meet the Biden administration's climate goals at the timeline, on the timeline, and the scale that's being proposed?
We have the minerals. The minerals are in the ground. There's no doubt about that. But there is no way to access them, especially with the Biden administration's policies towards mining.